Kwande kangakanani ukudayiswa ngokungekho emthethweni kwemizi yemindeni emalokishini kanti futhi kwenzeka kanjani lokhu sikubingelele sikwamukela ohlelweni iAsikhulume Let's Talk mbukeli igama lami ngingubongiwe uMakhumalo waKwaZwane sikukhumbuza ukuthi uhlelo iCutting Edge liyabuya ngeviki elizayo. How prevalent is the illegal sale of homes in Soweto and how are these homes actually sold? Akesizwe ukuthi bathina abahlali bakuleya ndawo.
I would say on average, as our leaders we community, we receive more than once complaint a week concerning issue le yokuthengiswa kwezindlu.
Abathengeli ukuthi bayahlala, bathengeli ukwenza ama-business. And lawo ma-business azo afford abantwana babo generations to generations. What about laba abanye? Ngoba ukuphuma njengoba kusebusika bayohlala estradeni indlu yakho ithengiswe ngokungekho emthethweni ngoba wena sowushonile kusela abantwana akungeke basathola umuntu ozobamela.
Inkinga la eOrlando inkulu kakhulu. More especially like izindlu za la eOrlando. Abantu bathatha advantage because izindlu zabo gogo are based on family houses. So uthola ukuthi when it's family houses ugogo unabantwana. Maybe 3, 2 of them bashadile. Oyi-1 usele endlini. Once kushona usiso sendlini aba izukulu laba abanye bafuna ukuthengisa indlu bafuna ukukhiphela abantwana ngaphandle. And we are facing, mina ngizoba honest, we are facing challenges ukuthi nase in masters they give us problems. Uthola ukuthi indlu eyi-1 banama letter of authority I2. When you go and investigate babamba la bayayeka. So inkinga esizithola sikuzo la eOrlando.
Kuvamile ke mbukela ukuthi uma uhamba elokishini laseSoweto ubone izindlu ezibhalwe ngokugqamile ukuthi not for sale, a pretty drastic move, but the only measure residents feel would help the vultures who are hovering around waiting to pounce on the vulnerable and most times uninformed homeowners. Sikukhumbuza ke mbukela ukuthi ungaba ingxenye lolu hlelo ngokushayela ucingo sizwe umbono noma umbuzo wakho. Inombolo zethu ke mbukeli zocingo zithi 011 714 0677 noma 011 714 0678 kanti ungabuye futhi usithole kumakhasi ethu okuxhumana ku Twitter @SABC Izindaba kanye na ku Facebook SABC Izindaba. Ukuze kubelule ke mbukeli sicela uqale ngo #Asikhulume #SABC News bese ke ubhala umbuzo noma umbono wakho. Mbukeli izakhamizi zase-Orlando eSoweto zinqume ukuthi sekwanele bakhala ngenkinga yokudayisa kwezindlu amalunga emindeni bayithole sebekhishwa ngendluzula kulimale ngisho nempahla imbala. Bameme iAsikhulume ukuba ize izokuqwashisa ngalomkhuba imindeni yakule ndawo bathi ihlalele ovalweni lokukhishwa ngokungemthetho ngamaqembu okuthiwa agaqele imizi yawo. Intatheli yohlelo ulindo kuhle Simelane usiphakele lo mbiko.
Ugogo uJohana owazalelwa eOrlando East esifundazweni saseGauteng uthi usehlale kuleli khaya labazali bakhe abangasekho emhlabeni iminyaka engama-28. Kodwa njengezinye izakhamuzi eziningi zaseSoweto angase alahlekelwe yileli khaya ngenxa yokuthi lithengiswe ngokungekho emthethweni.
Mina ngizalwe la ngo-1940 ngeyi-12 zikaMeyi usekhaya la. Besi-5 abantwana abala ekhaya. Si-5 bashone bonke laba abayi-4 bekungabafana bodwa kuyimi intombazana ngiyi-1. And then abazali bahlokofethile sengikhohlwe ukuthi bashone mari sekukudala bashonile. Kwasala thina ngasala nabobhuti abathathu. Abobhuti ababili kuyimi owesithathu. And then bashona labo bhuti kwashona lo oqala washona kwasala lo eyi-1 lo ithena makasala lo eyi-1 ahlala eyi-1 la endlini ubhuti wami ukuthi ubaba kale ntombazana yathatha umntana wakhe womfana anomfazi wabaletha la ekhaya without saying ukuthi azohlala nathi phansi sikhulume ngendaba yokuthi ufuna ukuthi abantwana bakhe ubekacela ukuthi abantwana bakhe bazohlala la nobhuti. Uze nje nabantwana bakhe nempahla wafika wafaka endlini ithena makabafaka endlini wathi akunamuntu lozambuza ukuthi kufanele ukuthi ayenze ini or ambuza ukuthi kwenzakala ini. Labantwana bakhe bazohlala la endlini. Bahleli lana lo mfana le ntombazana le yadivorsa umntana kabhuti wami and umshiya njalo endlini agula. Wahamba nomfana ukhona bekahlala kule ndlu baya eFusi bayohlala khona eFusi ashiye lo agula. Uze lana ukuthi lona soshonile sesithola incwadi yokuthi kufanele ukuthi siphume endlini. Leyo ndlu leyo esebiza ngale ntombazana ngo-Adilite akusaseyindlu yethu nabantu ababaqashe la ejardini baphume bonke. Siye sayobuze ofisini ukuthi kuze kanjani ukuthi lo mntana lona angene epermit. Bathi bona asazi ukuthi ungene kanjani epermit. Ngathi anazi kanjani ukuthi ungene epermit ngoba nisebenze housing. Yini nifake epermit kufanele ukuthi nazi ukuthi ungene kanjani. Hayi asazi ukuthi ungene kanjani asazi kodwa indlu kusase indlu yakhe indlu yethu indlu yakhe akusase indlu yethu.
Imindeni kule ndawo isihlalelo valweni lokukhishwa ezindlini ngendluzula. Iningi labo sebezibhale ukuthi not for sale ngokugqamile. Buqamama nomuzi kagogo uJohana sihlangane noSanele Kunene oneminyaka engama-28 obhekene nenkinga efanayo nakagogo nathi yaqala ngesikhathi umama wakhe edlula emhlabeni.
Immediately mama aqeda ukushona saba ne-family meeting kwasala thina abantwana bakamama. Obvious mele sisale nomuntu omdala because besisafunda isikolo. Ekhaya siba 4 ubhuti wami usiswa abosisi siba amantombazane siba 3 umfana uyi1. Umamkhulu same mamkhulu lo bekathenga isindlu before. Ifamily ibe like akuhlale yena ngithi bayile baxolelana bazwana. Wabuya ke yena sahlala naye njengomamkhulu wethu. Hayi samthemba umamkhulu wethu ayikho into wrong. Sahlala naye unyaka waphela. Kanti umuntu ubhizi emva kwethu thina not knowing nathi angithi singabantwana not knowing ngena wasitshela ukuthi hayi sihambe sohlala emarumini saphuma sitshela ukuthi hayi sesibadala vele sifuna iprivacy sahamba sayohlala emarumini. How from lapho wasicishela ugesi sangabi nogesi emarumini futhi la bengena abaqhashi bekuyimi nje kuphela erumini nomntana wakhe bekahlala erumini umamkhulu wasala endlini. Saqhubeka ke thina sahlala erumini wasicishela ugesi akasasikhulumisi. Okay, wasitshela ukuthi hayi ucela ukuthi siphume ke la ekhaya sihambe siyofunda yokuqasha because sengimdala sengiyasebenza asho mina. Bengina 21, yeah. Ngathatha abantwana bakithi ngahamba.
Ukunene ubonga umphakathi wakule ndawo ngosizo nolwenze ukuthi agcine esenophahla ngaphezulu kwekhanda lakhe.
Abomakhelwane ke sebayasho ukuthi hayibo indlu yakini iyathengiswa. Okay ugogo la next door. Ngize vele nobhuti wami eze. Kanjani kwenzakalani yabo? Ugogo athe yangazi labantu laba mara namhlanje ebusuku bayathutha. Ebusuku bazothutha nogogo wasingapha. Hayi okay vele 12 o'clock kwafika ivan bese kusele bona vele bese ngasena umuntu bese ngasena siqhashi sengena next emarumini kungena next. Bahamba vele. Ivan ugogo wangapha ebusuku waphuma makaphuma wasitshela nogogo wangapha next door. Ithe mabaceda ukuhamba ngevan bona bogogo laba bangapha bavele bakhiya le gate leli balikhiya ngengidi ezi different. Ekseni mabavuka obvious umnikazi wendlu uzile ufuna indlu yakhe. Makathuthi igate likhiwe afonela umamkhulu ukuthi hayibo ngithengile and then manje kwenzakalani ngoba ngithola igate likhiwe. Athi hey angazi mara qhekeza lapho. Kanti ugogo lo afona athi hayibo lo muntu lona oyithengile indlu nomnikazi wendlu la uzana asho mina nobhuti wami because ithe sibadala. Size vele ubhuti wami nalomuntu othenga indlu ngazathi ke baclash yabo. Bakhulume kabi bakhulumisane kabi. Okay yabangazathi iyathula mara ke ugogo lo ngapha next door wathi ungena ngeke ungene sizokhiya la mawufake yakhe ingidi nami ngizofaka yami ingidi angeke ungene la.
Ukunene uthi lowo uthengele likhaya usebuye kaningi ezobakhipha usebavulele necala enkantolo kaMantshi eProtea khona eSoweto.
After ku serious evictiwa ke this year we had ukuthi okay sithola lawyer angithi kunemikhukhu kunama room we had ukuthi sithole lawyer, and then each and every month besibhadala lawyer imali yonke rent 3,000 rand. So ever since okay uthulile akakasho next, and then basitshela ukuthi you had to go to Protea Court. Masifike Protea Court saziyela ke thina kuleyo Protea Court. Masifike Protea Court basitshela ukuthi there is no case, it's done. Kumele ukuthi thina vele siphume vele like, and azange sa attend a case like asazi ukuthi kwenzakala ne Protea Court, azange sa attend next because angithi kule kwaba ne COVID. And then thina silwe sitshela ukuthi hayi COVID thina sirelaxile, ngithene sitshela ukuthi bazosibize court eProtea ukuthi wozani phela or bazosenda incwadi something because lesikhathi ukhona umalume bebayenza lo nto leyo. Hayi thina sa relax asathi COVID kanti ugayi ke yena ke naweza ne-eviction wasikhipha sayi Protea basitshela ukuthi there is no case vele nje, it's done, ijudge vele seyikhiphile vele into yokuthi vele kumele siphume.
Mbukeli, ingabe ivame kangakanani inkinga yokuthengiswa kwemizi ngokungemthetho kule ndawo?
Kukakhulu kabi. And kubhlungu ngoba batargeta ama-child-headed families nezindlu zabo zalokazi.
Almost every day sisebenzana nokulwisana nabantu abathenga izindlu nabantu abachagela abantu izindlu.
Khuluma iqiniso, inkinga ibhidlange kakhulu, particularly ezindlini lezi othola ukuthi zazi ownwa abogogo.
Ugogo uJohana nokunene sebeye kubameli abazimele ukuze kwenzeke ubulungiswa. Bagweme nokuthi bagcine nabo sebesele dengwane njengabaningi kule ndawo.
Ubhlungu ke mbukeli obenzeka kuleya ndawo. Ake sithi shelele eyitolo siyabuya khona manje nezihambeli zethu ukudinga idakabanzi lolu daba. Sikukhumbuze ke mbukeli ukuthi ungaba ingxenye lolu hlelo ngokusithinta emakhasini ethu okuxhumana kanye naseyingcingweni zethu. Sikubingelele siphinde sikwamukele mbukeli, sikukhumbuze ukuthi uhlelo i-cutting edge liyabuya ngeviki elizayo, kanti uma uqeda ukuhlanganyela nathi sikhuluma ngokudayiswa kwemizi emalokishini okungekho emthethweni. Uma kwenzeka lokhu kuyaye kube nokusatshiswa kwemindeni, ukujikijela kweimpahla yasendlini emgwaqeni kanye nokukhishwa ngokungemthetho kwemindeni eshiwe dengwane futhi ingazi ukuthi izolala kuphi. Abezomthetho, umphakathi kanye nabezindaba bayaye babizwe makwenzeka lokhu. Ukudinga idakabanzi lolu daba ake samukele ihambeli zethu umama uThembi Sikhosana nongumholi womphakathi khona lapha eOrlando East eSoweto, no Mbabalelo Mbadi obuya eVets Law Clinic ne-Property Unit khona lapho, no Dokotela uSimphiwe Madigizela oyi-home loan expert, umnumzane uJonathan Thekiso wenhlangano i-Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority kanye no Makaziwe Ntuli no-Johannesburg Deeds Registrar, no Advocate Refilwe Murake no assistant Master of the High Court. Sinamukele nonke, sinamukele hlelweni lethu asikhulume mamthembi zoqala ngawe ngoba inkinga iqale khona eOrlando la besibizelwe khona. Kwenzakalani?
eOrlando kunzima ngalendlela ezisubuhlungu. We will just wake up in the morning and hear a family being evicted. And masiya lapho sithola ukuthi abantu aba-evictwayo esikhathini esiningi bazi maybe a week before or 2 weeks before, or let's say makuguti baze ngesikhathi it's 31 days, and it's not possible ukuthi umuntu nge-31 days angabe sekazi ukuthi uzosuka ayephi.
Sikhuluma ngemindeni emngakanani la?
I've taken you guys around to see in Orlando. It's at the moment it's 100 plus houses.
Sure.
The family are almost out, so they can be kicked out anytime.
Mbabalelo, I'm going to come to you because this is very concerning. You hear umama ukhuluma ngokuthi abanye they're not given sufficient notice. Uma ngabe uzokhipha umuntu endlini, inotice engakanani edingakalayo?
Well, the first thing that we'll need to do if you want to evict someone from the house is first you must give them a notice to vacate, which notifies them of the time period that they have to move out of the house. From there, you have to institute legal proceedings. Depending on which court you're going to, it can either be an application or an action, where if it's an action, you give them a time to reply, which will be like 10 days for them to deliver their notice of intention to defend. And it can be the whole legal proceedings and exchange of pleadings. And even after you've done that, whether the people have defended or not, there is an added step in terms of the PI Act, which requires someone to serve what you call a Section 4.2 notice. Now, that notice calls on people to come to court, present their personal circumstances, or if they want to defend, they can come and defend. An eviction is not something that can happen overnight, unless if it's an urgent eviction or if it is illegal eviction.
Do you get these stories at the law clinic?
So we do get stories. Sometimes we find that people are evicted without a court order, which is unlawful because Section 8 in particular prohibits that. If someone tries to evict you without a court order, they are actually committing a crime. They can be arrested. But the challenge which has been there is sometimes when people go to the police will tell them it's not a criminal matter, even though it is a criminal matter, and they will tell them to go to attorneys. Now, attorneys can also assist with what is known as a spoliation order, where you can go and say, I was occupying this property in undisturbed use, and someone unlawfully deprived me of that right.
Mam Thembi, angibuye kuwe before ngiya ku deeds office nasemasters uku understand ukwenzakalani la. Nina as a community and the leaders in the community, nibasiza kanjani abantu and manifika kubona bathini ngokuthi ubani ofikayo athathe lezindlu kubo?
Okay. Abantu abathenga izindlu eOrlando abantu abanemali. And reason number 1 ukuthi Orlando yards are very big and they're buying these houses because they want to demolish. Buy a demolisher and build double-story apartments. So labantu abathenga izindlu ngendlela esemuva. Ngoba manje when they buy the houses with from whomever. Let's say mina I'm born with 5 people. We are 5 siblings, and amongst the 5, I'm not at home already. I'm out and I have my own place, and I decide to sell the home. So when I sell my home, there's 4 of my siblings that needs to be contacted, or maybe that needs to sign something to say I'm selling the home. But at the end, you'll find that the 4 siblings were not even aware up until the sale has been wrapped up. Now, when they know that the sale has been wrapped up, it's when they come to us and say, now, community leaders, there's this issue. Now we try to intervene. And another challenge is with lawyers, because, you know, Orlando is a very, how can I put it? It's a Section 21 community. All of us are living on grant, and some of us are living on shacks that we rent out. So it's not possible for a family like Gagogo to go and get a lawyer. They cannot afford. So when we go in, we just jump in and try and go haphazardly everywhere where we can. But the biggest action that we do is to stand at the gate and say no one will move in until we find out what is happening.
Dr. It doesn't sound right.
Ayikho right to masibulise kubo bonke abasehlelweni. Okokuqala kukho i-constitution in this country, umthetho, umgaqo-siseko, human rights. Akukho right, akukho semthethweni ukuthi abantu ba-violate ngolu hlobo. I mean, masicabanga ukuthi kuse-winter manje kusebusika. Okokuqala kuyenzeka ukuthi indlu ithengiswe. Mayithengiswe indlu kufuneka ithengiswe ngendlela e-right. Awukwazi uthengisa indlu ngeyo yakho. Awukwazi ukuthi uthengisa indlu ungakhange uze nesiqinisekiso ngaphambili ukuthi ungumnikazi wale ndlu une-title deed. And kumele kusayinwe i-offer to purchase, OTP, phakathi komuntu azawuthenga indlu nalo uthengisayo. Kumele kulandelwe umthetho ukuba amagqwetha enze i-transfer ne-registration of properties. Kukhona i-Law Society of South Africa. Mangaba kukhona amagqwetha are-involved ekwenzeni i-activities ezinjezi illegal, kumele ukuthi kuyiwe kwi-Law Society of South Africa, because babelong kwi-Law Society of South Africa bakwazi ukuthi kwi-Code of Conduct kuthathwe action. Kwakhona uthethe ngephaya, iphaya yi-protection of illegal eviction. Uthi la mthetho mangabe uzawukhupha umuntu endlini, kumele ukuthi kanti ibe indlu yakho kokuqala ungakhupha umuntu kuyo, awukwazi umkhupha ungamnikezanga i-alternative accommodation. So ngumthetho okhoyo apha eSouth Africa. So ukwenziwa kwezinto ukuthi zenziwe ngendlela emnyama kungalandelwa umthetho akukho mthethweni oko. Kumele amapolisa abe involved, law enforcement agencies ne-attorneys, Law Society of South Africa. Ukhulume indaba yokuthi abantu abasebenzi kune-legal aid of South Africa esebenza free owned by government, where they can also help without paying.
And I want us to look at these particular options, but also there's something else that I'm confused by here. People have title deeds, but their houses are getting sold. And I'm going to include our guests who are on Zoom right now. Ukuthi understand kahle mbukeli siqondisise ukuthi kahle kahle kwenzakalani lana, yini lobu mnyama lobu obenzakalayo la, ngoba siyabona ukuthi kuningi ukuhamba ngemuva okukhona, kodwa siyabuya mbukeli unganyakazi. Mbokeli, sisakhuluma ngalo udaba lokudayiswa kwezindlu ngokungekho emthethweni. Ake samukele ihambeli zethu ezikuZoom. Ngizoqala ngosisi uMakaziwe. Ngizwe kahle ukuthi kahle kahle kwenzakalani ngoba usisi Makaziwe Ntuli uyi-Johannesburg Deeds Registrar. Sis Makaziwe, one of the things that is coming out very clearly here is that ngathi kuba khona inkinga ebakhona kuma-title deeds. Kuza kanjani ukuthi umuntu ephethe i-title deed ezandleni zakhe azi ukuthi la kukubo ukhona naye ku-title deed, kodwa we then see one family member able to sell a home and not consulting wonke umuntu. Kusuke kufakwe kuphi ama-documents la?
Okay, ngiyabonga Bongiwe, ngibingelele bonke abalaleli nama colleagues wami khona online. Sisibongiwe, i-process ye-registration system iqala ngama-parties are involved. We process. I-registrar of deeds is right at the end. And nakhona kudependa nge-cost of sale or i-cost of a property ukuthi is it in terms of sale? Is it in terms of for sale? Or maybe is it in terms of estate transfer and all that. So all those factors needs to be taken into consideration. But in terms of Deeds Registries Act, Registrar of Deeds or Deeds Office does not initiate a process. There's a conveyancer in terms of our legislation that is responsible to prepare ama deeds documents and also irresponsible for correctness, accuracy of all the facts in the title deed.
And so how do you ensure that the facts are correct?
From the deeds office side, remember the seller and the buyer, the purchaser, they don't come to the register of deeds. They only meet with the conveyancer after they've signed an agreement of sale, if it's a sale. And all those particulars, personal information, the reason to transfer the property is between the conveyancers and the parties concerned. And then from side, we check illegal requirement. Like for instance, if A is transferring the property, then we will check if A is the registered owner. And if B is transferring the property and from our records, A is the owner, we reject the transaction. So now you find that in some of the properties, maybe it's a family home, but a title deed was registered with one family member. The registrar of deeds wouldn't know if the transaction is lodged at the deeds office. It's a family property, was there consultations, because our process starts when the documents, deeds and documents are lodged at the deeds office.
All right.
Then Tina, we check who is the owner. Are there any attachments or caveats that maybe were recorded with the registrar of deeds to say the property cannot be transferred?
Okay.
So if those court orders, then we will act based on the court order. But the first thing that we check is that who is transferring the property? Is it the same person as the one on the title deed? Then we transfer the.
And I'd like to check that with Umamthembi in just a moment, but let me come to you, Advocate Murake, because you are at the Master's, office, and one of the things that we often see is sometimes people say there's a misrepresentation that happens when it comes to documents that are then within your reach. What is going on there when it comes to the misrepresentation, where you see a person coming and saying, I'm a surviving spouse or I am a family member and all of that, and that comes before you? How do you do the verification?
Thank you, Ms. Bongiwe. The verification, ma'am, is done if the deceased was married, then our verification will be the marriage certificate. The surviving spouse must have a marriage certificate. And if there is no, the deceased wasn't married, then we will ask for the next of kin affidavit. That's where we will check that if there are children involved. If we get that there are children involved, then those children will be our beneficiaries in terms of interstate succession. But to prove the verification, there must be a marriage certificate. If one says he or she is married, or we will be guided by the will if that the deceased left a will.
So have you had instances where someone fakes a marriage certificate and then comes to yourselves and says, I'm married to this particular individual, and things appear then from your end not to be above board?
If one fakes the marriage certificate, remember the marriage certificate is issued by the Department of Home Affairs. When it's presented to us, if it looks legible, we will continue with administration of the estate until somebody comes to complain.
And what happens then if you discover that it is fake? Do you still, you know, what happens with the letter of authority? I'm trying to get to that letter. That do you then hold on to the letter? Do you give to the person? Because we need to try and understand exactly what happens if someone is found with fraudulent documents.
If we have already issued the letter of authority, we will call that letter back and convene a meeting amongst the families.
All right, and let me come to you, Ndate Tekiso, because one of the things that is very clear in this situation, they are property agents, estate agents who are selling these particular homes. These are dubious individuals who are taking part in a crime.
Yes, ma'am. Let me greet the viewers and listeners. To start by saying that, I mean, we had the good doctor indicating our constitution and what have you. I'm going to emphasize the fact that we are a country of laws, milau, and one of those acts, it is the Property Practitioners Act 22 of 2019, which regulates the conduct of property practitioners, what we used to call estate agents. Now, no one, and this is very important, no one can sell any property in South Africa unless they have what we call a Fidelity Fund Certificate, FFC. And that is very important because the selling and buying of houses is a very, very specialized skill. Now, you have indicated the fact that there are those dubious characters, and there's lots of them in South Africa right now, that purport ba claimang hore ba na le tsebo ya ho rekisa matlo. The buying and selling of property in South Africa is a very specialized skill. So, first of all, motho na nang hore o tseba ho rekisa ntlo must have what we call an FFC, which is a Fidelity Fund Certificate. And there are qualification criteria before Rona, as the PPRA, issue anyone with a Fidelity Fund Certificate
so
or FFC.
Pardon me for coming in there. Mare ke kopa o botsa ge motho o na le certificate se kaofela and all of that. Mare nna ke a fitla ke re ke nna fela mongwantlo. Ke tshwere title deed mara ke na le bana ba ko heso ba i4 ha ka ba bolela hore ke rekisa ntlo e. Property agent I verify jwang information ya gore nna ke le monga ntlo or gona le batho ba bang gape e le gore a gone gore a etse dintho above board a ska ya ka gore nna ke reng mara a etse ntho ka tsela e tsamayang hantle.
I get first of all motho ring o rekise ntlo ka ba o rekisa dintlo must have a certificate, and then the documents tsa teng tsa gore ntlo eo ke a hae ona le ownership. This office, like Memakazu has mentioned, right? So the important thing, Kore, Rona PPRA, or Rona le motor and then Rona or the records in Rona, our database, or motor owner, legitimate kapache, and then if are legitimate, then kite more kalanta batsamulao in terms of making sure that motor or registered to kapa or regisantu. We register ka ho ya ka molao kapa chair, and then ke teng mo ile gore o tshwantse kene mo tabeng tsa molao and make sure that there's compliance.
All right, Mamthembi uyezwa ukuthi kuthiwa I wonder ukuthi nithini nina njengabahlali.
I'm very worried ngoba lokho ongikuzwayo nokwenzekayo hluke kakhulu. Okokuqala nje kunendlu ebesiyilwela in the beginning of the year. This house is sold by one of the family members. Let me say we are 4 siblings, as I gave you the scenario before, and the one is the only one remaining. And he sells the house, whilst the other 3 siblings' children are in the house, and those children didn't know. And in this house, there is a title deed that belongs to the owner, which is the grandmother of these kids that are in the house. Then there is a letter of authority, which is in the name of this remaining sibling. And there is a will attached to the title deed. And there is a story on the title deed behind that explains the wishes of the owner of the house. But the house was still sold. So how do you explain? I'm trying to understand, and I'm trying to tally with them to say, I understand how things are supposed to be done, but that's a story. On the ground, it's not that way. It's really not that way.
And I wonder then if any of you online, before I even come back here in studio, would like to take this particular question and respond to Mamtem, please. Okay, let's start with Advocate Morake.
Okay. What I can say, Kihore, if the deceased owned a house and then before the house can be sold, the conveyancer must submit to the master a GM33 form, power of attorney to be endorsed, a copy or certified copy or original, deed of sale, and all the beneficiaries must give consent to that sale of property. If that procedure was not followed, I don't know how it will end up being transferred at the deeds office.
Ntate Morake, I'm going to ask us to pause for a second as I come back to you after the break. Ntate, take us on this one, because the issue of consent is a big issue that I am seeing here unfold. And I want all of us to touch on it, because it's really one of the things that is at the heart of what Mamtem is saying, and what are some of the residents that we spoke to are saying, because they're saying they did not consent and they were on the deed, but they're finding themselves in a situation where they are powerless. You find yourself in such a situation and you have not consented, what are the steps that you can then follow? Mbukeli, sesibuyile sisakhuluma ngayo indaba yokuthengiswa kwezindlu illegally, and imaphi amalungelo akho uma kwenzeka lokho. Ntate Thekiso, I'm going to come back to you very quickly so that we talk about this issue, because you wanted to respond to what Mamthembi had to say.
I think, first of all, I get about it, there's supposed to be a consent, right? Now, consent A would have meant that there was somebody who was playing a role in terms of the sale of that property. And this is where we come in as the PPRA, that we want to check the integrity, the validity of that person or organization that sold that house. Because there are very clear processes to be followed for anyone, and there's a code of conduct that regulates the conduct of people who are selling houses. Now, the fact that they've sold a house and they may not be registered with the PPRA means that what they did was illegal. So what we'll do is we will leave our details with yourselves so that Mamthembi can get in touch with us, so that we pursue this individual or individuals, who claim that they were registered to sell that property. Quickly, what it means is that if you go ahead and sell property and you're not registered, it means you are taking away, that whole process from property practitioners, law-abiding property practitioners who are accredited to sell property. Number one. Number two, it means that you are effectively robbing the economy in terms of that income that comes out of the sale of the property. But finally, it means that you are compromising people who are supposed to be legitimate owners of that property. So, long and short, Mamthembi, I will leave our details with yourselves so that Mamthembi can get in touch with us, so that we can pursue those individuals who sold the property illegally. What
becomes then the role of financial institutions in this particular matter? Because they also add yet another layer to this conversation.
Yes. Kaloku thina njenge financial institutions umsebenzi wethu kubolekisa ngemali kumuntu oboleka imali for uthenga indlu. So xa ngaba ufuna uthenga indlu uza kuthi apply for a home loan. Senze i-process yethu ke yokuverifya wena uba uyaqualifya for le loan, uqeshiwe, une-income, unga-afforda, senze i-credit assessment. Once upass affordability, then we approve a loan for wena. But if you apply for a loan, sifuna i-OTP, offer to purchase. Ibalulekile la document. Ile isivumelwano esiphakathi komuntu othenga izindlu nothengayo. I-offer to purchase. Now, ndifuna ukuchaphazela into yobana kubalulekile uba i-due diligence yenziwe zuzo zonke i-players in this process. I-consent, someone must verify if there is consent at every step, from PPRA, estate agents, they must verify. If it's a family home, there's 4 siblings, all the 4 siblings must consent, especially if babhaliwe kwi-title deed. That's the first thing that must happen. So the whole process must be followed, and every player and party, they must do due diligence. They must be rigorous. Babe thara, bachekishe izinto. Because I will ask the question, but ithini incentive yami uba ndingajongi izinto when I'm supposed uba ndijonge izinto? Kukho into endizayifumana mhlawumbi? So kumele sibuze le mibuzo njalo. Every step of the way, the process, ekuqaleni uyophuma ekugqibeleni, even i-master of the office court, before bakhuphe i-letter of authority, kumele bacheke. Is this the right person? Is this the person okumele ukuthi siyamnika le letter? Singakhuphi letter, si find out after the effect ukuthi sikhuphe i-letter wrong, and then we try and cancel the letter.
And it signals corruption as well. Dr.
Yeah, so that's why what would be your incentive?
Yes.
What would be the motive? What would be the rationale for you? You don't do the proper checks and balances. You let something pass. There must be a reason. You can't do that for no reason. Which now talks to the issue of corruption, which you must fight it, which is a cancer. You must fight corruption. The law enforcement agents must get involved. Police must be involved. Hawks must be involved. But we must check and have details. The Law Society of South Africa, they must go the attorneys, because no property can be transferred to the deeds office at the end without the lawyers and attorneys.
Sure.
And then there's a legal aid of South Africa which works for free to represent as families as Nganamali. So everybody must come to the party and do their part. Then we'll be able to deal with this thing.
Babalelo, right on that note, I want to come to you just after taking this caller, because it appears that there's a syndicate here. If steps are being skipped and things are not working correctly, it looks like a number of people are working together to get us to this desired result. But I do understand we have a caller on the line, Maki from Soweto. Sawubona. Maki?
Hello, ma.
Yebo, ungaqhubeka?
Hello, ma, Miki Mamet.
Ukatswela pele mna.
Okay, sibone ma.
Ubua libongiwe ko Asikhulume, ukatswela pele mna.
Okay, mama. What mama, when I cases are returned, in 7 years or 8 years. Nkhono o inele friend ya gogo wa bana ba. Ya bona aba for dan trainer ba ke signature ya di wheels tsa bona. And then gogo ha tlhokafala ha ba re gogo mo file ntho mahala ha e reka ha etsa nik bana ba ke 7 years ba dula ko strateng gogo o tlhokafetse le nna wa bona o tlhokafetse. And o munki last week wa ngwanyana wa teng ba mo koba ko family ke dula le ena wa jwanong o na le 3 days a dula le.
All right, re a leboga Ausmaki, re tlo try o re o kreile dikarabo mo ntweng o buang ka yona, because ke yona topic ya rona today. But Mbabalelo, I want to come back to you, because it appears as if several steps are being skipped here, and it looks like there's a number of people that are colluding to make sure that we get to this result. It begs the question, is there a syndicate that is operating here?
I think there is a syndicate, and the issue starts when, as a deceased estate, as she's saying, when someone has passed away, you are supposed to report the estate to the master's office. And the law actually gives you 14 days to go and report, even though people don't actually follow the procedure. But when you go and report, I don't think the master does enough with respect with what they're supposed to do. Because if I go there, yes, if we were married, yes, they will want to see the marriage certificate. But if the person was not married, or the person who passed away is my grandmother, for instance, I will go there, they will give me forms. There is a next of kin affidavit, which I'm deposing to. But already, I'm a fraudulent person. You are allowing me to say, well, I'm saying this under oath, I'm the only person who's alive, and all the other people are deceased. The master does not then investigate. They will grant me the letters of authority. And that letter gives me all the powers. Yes, we can blame the conveyancers and all the other people, but when someone is coming with a letter of authority, they have been authorized by the master to sell the property. Now, you know this is the only person. We're looking at the documents which have been filed. They say this is the only person who's left behind. And in terms of the loss of intestate succession, you can only apply it from the information that we have from the people that you're talking to. But once the step is skipped at the master's office and one has letters of authority, it becomes a challenge. And even if people come to us, because we do find people coming to us, and we write to the master to say, this is what's going on, the family is saying that there are other people as well who have not been disclosed. The master will call a family meeting and say they're cancelling the letters of authority, but the person still has the physical letters of authority, which they can then go use to try and sell the property.
Advocate Morake, I'm going to give it to you because this speaks directly to you. How do you respond?
Firstly, ma'am, the master's office doesn't do investigations. We take information as it comes to us. Firstly, we wouldn't know that the will has been forged until somebody comes to complain. And in terms of interstate succession, if the deceased didn't leave a will, all the children are the beneficiaries. So if one comes to the master,
whose responsibility? Pardon me, Advocate Morake, whose responsibility rests? Is it to investigate? Kimang?
It rests on the family who comes to record the estate.
Even
the master doesn't go outside and investigate.
Maybe verifying documents.
And verification?
We are dealing with walk-in clients.
Yes.
Yes.
And verification, because there's a cry here to say you deal with walk-in clients, but there's very little verification, even for those walk-in clients.
Like the gentleman was saying that one of the siblings would come and say, I'm the only surviving. Then the master that person will complete the next of kin affidavit, meaning that person is lying under oath. The moment you give us incorrect information under oath, you are lying. Criminal be held liable. That's what we advise the other siblings to open a case against that person. And when we call a meeting, we request that the letter which was issued to be cancelled. We don't leave it with the person whom it was issued to. We cancel it.
Sis Magaziwe, when we come back from the break, I'd like us to come back to you because I'm very worried by what Advocate Morake is saying. We seem to be catching things at a very late part of the process when things have moved instead of catching them from the beginning. And I wonder, how do we begin to do this? Mbukeli sesiphetha ke siqale sibheke isombululo zalenkinga. Sisimakaziwe ngizoqala ngawe ake sikhulume sizwe ukuthi lenkinga le umuntu angakwazi ukuyigwema kanjani ngokuthola iaccess to the deed register.
Okay, thanks Sisibongile. Engikushoyo ukuthi we always advise our community members ukuthi deeds office is a public office and everybody is welcome to come to the deeds office to verify information at a fee. We've got even our information section. That is just
how much is that fee?
It titled it. It's 112 rand.
Muntu mayenganayo.
A copy ye titled it.
And if you don't have money?
In terms of legislation, we have to call for a fee because deeds office does not get money from Treasury. We've got an account. So we pay for our own services, cost, our systems and all that. So we don't get money from Treasury. So that money is used to maintain our systems and everything that we do at deeds office.
And it's quite sad if someone doesn't have money then for that particular service. Mam Thembi, very briefly, how then do you begin to remedy this? Ngoba kukhona nabanye abathenga izindlu from abantu abadla idakamizwa.
Okay. Tina, as a community, we have created a committee that looks over those houses to say, if you want to buy that kind of a house, maybe let's say it's a house that's left under a child care. So those kids there's no one there that can say, I'm here, that can even verify anything if there's a need. And again, I'm worried about awareness. Magazi spoke about advising the community or the clients. There's no awareness. We are talking about Orlando here. There's no awareness. Those kids are not even aware that somebody passed away. They need to go to masters. They need to go here. They need to go there. And they don't even have that 100 and something that they need to pay. So,
yeah, I think there's something that needs to be done here. Dr. Very briefly, let's talk about what becomes the solution here.
So what becomes a solution? We need a concerted effort to this one. But also, if he processes, let's say, in any of the entities like the master's office of the court, those processes, if they need to be reviewed and tightened and strengthened, let that be done. We don't need to create another institution. Parliament can actually amend the act if they need to get teeth to be able to bite. You see, we need to be able to catch this thing before yenzeke. We can't come after the effect.
That's the thing.
We must be proactive rather than reactive. When the horse has bolted, it's bolted. When the train has left the station, it's gone. Too late.
I will say to the members of the community, if you need assistance, there are a number of legal aid institutions, such as us at the First Law Clinic. We don't charge a fee to consult with clients. And even if it's just advice, it's better to go consult with an attorney, give the issue, this is what's going on, we will consult with you and give you advice or tell you what it is that you need to do. Yeah. I think they need legal assistance. And
definitely, those are some of the details that, will need to be shared at a later stage. Dr. Tekiso, let me come to you. What becomes a solution?
Solution, number one, anyone who claims that they have the ability to sell property, we're not, as the customer, the consumer, we have the right to ask them for two things. Number one, they must show you the code of conduct that regulates their conduct as per the Property Practitioners Act. Number two, FFC, which is the Fidelity Fund Certificate. Leona, it must be in their office if they have an office. But you have the right to ask them for a copy. FFC certificate, because if Havana, then you have a difficulty as a client to claim anything from the PPRA without FFC. And when I say claim, I mean claiming from the Fidelity Fund. Okay. Without a Fidelity certificate, there cannot be any claims from a Fidelity Fund. You have the right as a consumer to ask for that information or for those documents.
Yeah. Advocate Morake, your final word?
My final word is that everyone, I will advise the family selling or the banality, that's what the letters of authority, they've just reported their estate. What they can do, they must rush to the deeds office to go and register that property into their names. They mustn't leave it as it is. Or alternatively, when we issue the letter, they must, if the siblings are 4, it's possible we can issue the letter in all 4, 4.
All right.
To avoid community where one person and that person will go behind their back to sell the house.
So it sounds like us as a show now possibly must get all of you involved with the community, everyone here, with the community, so people are taken on a step-by-step basis, because this is becoming a huge issue and communities are crying about it, and it looks like we might just need to all of us gather together and be able to take community members like Abu Mamtembi and other community leaders who are stuck with this particular problem, just to give them a sense of what needs to happen here. Mbugeli, siyabonga kakhulu sinqonqoze kuwe nje ngokuthi uhlanganyele kanye nathi kanye nezihambeli zethu mama uThembi Sikhosana umholi womphakathi khona eOrlando East eSoweto, noMbabalelo Mbadi obuya eVets Law Clinic Property Unit, noDokotela uSimpiwe Madigizela oyi-home loan expert, umnumzana uJonathan Tekiso wenhlangano iProperty Practitioners Regulatory Authority, uMakaziwe Ntuli noyi-Johannesburg Deeds Registrar, no-Advocate Refilwe Morake noyi-Assistant Master of the High Court. Asethembe ukuthi ingxoxo Mbukeli izoqhubeka emakhasini okuxhumana ngoba inkulu lenkinga. Ukakhumalo wakwazana nethimba le-Asikhulume uthi nisale kahle.